So what we'll be covering in today's session is complete risk protection. I won't go into too much detail, but naturally, risk is one of the biggest concerns for any organization looking at salary sacrifice. Of course, you're leasing cars on behalf of your employees, so we want to make sure you, the business, are fully protected. So we're really excited to launch what we call complete risk protection. So we'll be covering today who are we, what we do, quite a top line. Why does risk matter? Touch on it very briefly, but we'll absolutely go into that in a bit more detail. What is our new complete risk protection service? What's included? Is there anything that's not protected? There's, of course, a few myths around risk protection. So we'll definitely focus on those, what they are, and is it true, is it not? Who can benefit and how to take action. So you may well get put in front of somebody like myself to take a bit of a deeper dive into the scheme if it's something you'd like to explore in more detail. But I'll absolutely show you where to go and how to book in some time with our EV specialists. So I'll hand over to Tom. But any questions you do have, feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll spend some time at the end going through a bit of a Q&A.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eilon. Hi, everyone. Lovely to have a wide group of you on here. I know that there are some existing clients on the call, some people looking at new schemes. So I'll just give a brief introduction about the electric car scheme. We've made it our purpose to make moving to net zero an obvious choice. That's why we come to work. At the moment, it's not an obvious choice. Getting into an electric car is just too expensive. Getting access to the tax benefits is too complex. We want to make it an absolute no-brainer to get into salary sacrifice for an employer, to offer it to your staff, and this move to complete risk protection is a big big step on that journey for us. We've been around nearly 3 years since the first car was ordered, and now we have about 1,500 employers signed up. The great and the good of small and medium and large business. I'm sure there's businesses like yours in that list. And yeah, we're open to the mass market. Everyone should be able to access salary sacrifice, all from one employee to 100,000 employees in your business. Why is salary sacrifice great? Well, at its core, it's an affordability benefit to help employees get into electric cars, so they can save 30 to 60% on any electric car lease through salary sacrifice. That's why salary sacrifice is great. That's common to every scheme. That's broadly why you should be getting into it, why it should be interesting for yourselves and your employees. But as you assess different options on the market, there are some real key considerations you want to consider when choosing a scheme. And we focus on 3 that we think are the most important. First is, how is the employer and employee protected? Because there are risks, and obviously we're going to spend all of our time talking about that today. The second is, what price cars can my employees access? Obviously you want the cheapest cars to be offered to your employees. That will drive more people to take up the scheme and benefit more people. And finally, it's an employee benefit that you're going to have to manage. It needs to be trusted, and it needs to have 5-star service to make it easy for you. Those are the things that we think are most important, that we spend our time on. And we think there are some differences between your options that you have to look at a scheme. So I'll start with briefly going over the structure of salary sacrifice, because underneath that makes clear where the risk comes from. So that underneath the structure of salary sacrifice, the employer is leasing an electric car. They sign for it, they lease it effectively under the business's name. They then give that car as a benefit to the employee to use for personal use, and that employee reduces their salary accordingly. And that reduction in salary is not taxed. That basically means the employee can pay for the car before income tax, and that's where the 30 to 60% sales come from. But the risk comes from the fact that the employer is leasing the car. Now, what happens if your employee leaves? The employer is stuck with the car. And if an employer wants to give that car back early, because the employee is no longer in the business, these leases generally have an early termination fee or early return fee that costs half the remaining lease payments. So let's say you had a an employee took an expensive car, could be £1,000 a month, let's say for 40 months to make it easy. The next day they resigned, that's £20,000 bill the company has to send the car back. And no company wants to give a benefit where they're taking really big financial risks. Even if it's a great benefit, it's just very difficult to stomach for a business. So it's a big blocker to engaging in any benefit, specifically salary sacrifice. So we wanted to put in place a protection service that covers all these risks. That means that an employer shouldn't be out of pocket if a car needs to be returned early. So this is what we call complete risk protection. And I'll go through step by step of all the reasons why someone might need to give back a car early and where the liability sits. We cover the vast majority, and you should see that the employer should not cover any of it. So specifically, if for whatever reason, one of your employees gets into a car and they have to be made redundant or dismissed from the company, we will reimburse those early termination fees to the company. Similarly, if there's a resignation after 3 months of the lease, we will reimburse the early termination fees. If there's family-friendly leave, paternity, long-term sickness, death, all these reasons, the employee may not be able to salary sacrifice for the car, or the car will need to be returned, and we will cover the shortfall for the business. Now, the employee does take some responsibilities as well in signing the lease, and these obviously must be made extremely clear to them. If they do resign within the first 3 months of getting the car, they will need to reimburse the company for the early termination fee. This is not a benefit for someone about to leave the company, and that needs to be made very clear to the employee. Similarly, if they do something stupid like breach the terms of the lease or get dismissed because they need to be responsible for reimbursing the company of the early termination fee. If the car's written off or stolen, then their insurance will kick in. But specifically, there's no reason that the employer should be covering this cost. Now, I'll just draw your eyes to the last line in green. I've said that the employee is responsible in some cases for reimbursing the fee, but if your employee does not reimburse the fee, then the employer would be out of pocket, and in that case, we step in to cover the difference. We want to make it clear as a no-brainer, there's no reason, there's no financial risk for the business to engage in this, and that's why we cover these differences. We think it's really important to promote people into salary sacrifice, so we try and make this really comprehensive, and we can briefly cover what the differences are between some of the big schemes available in the market. This is in the detail of the Octopus and Tusker offer. Both are great schemes. We like these companies, but we've done the work to unpick what they cover in their risk protection. So it's very common for a scheme to offer risk protection, but only from a certain number of months after the car's delivered. So you can see for Octopus, there's a 6-month exclusion period before they're able to protect the business. There's also a cap on the number of cars to go back. Tusker, I'd say a bit keener on their risk protection offered, but again, a lot of it is only covered from 3 months into the lease. The final line on this is a new one that we put in as well, which is what happens if the employee takes charge of the car, there's some damage to the car, and they return the car and maybe leave the business, and obviously they were charged for the damage, or the business is to charge for the damage, because remember it's a business contract, but the employee is no longer there or will not compensate the business for the damage. Again, we will cover the shortfall for the business. That can happen, and we've seen it happen, and we don't want to leave the business with a gap. So that's why we've included that at that point. So we've taken the step forward we've always had risk protection, but this is an improvement in it. So we've taken the step forward to remove the exclusion periods from the employer and to include these lines of what happens if the employee doesn't reimburse the employer when they should. So I hope that's clear. I want to go on to talk about some myths about risk protection, some common things I hear in the market, and why I don't think they make sense. So the first off is an argument that says, look, don't worry about having an exclusion period of 3 or 6 months where the risk protection is not present. you sign off the employee getting a car, and you probably know whether they're going to have to be made redundant or dismissed within 3 or 6 months of that. I don't think that argument holds water, mainly because there is a delivery timeline. So the cars are ordered, it can arrive anywhere between a week later to a year later. And let's say in the case it's a year, you, the business, will authorize this. You then have to wait a year for the delivery to your employee. Then maybe another 6 months, you're on the hook for the risk. So you would really need to have your crystal ball going out to 18 months in that case. I think it's appropriate to have a crystal ball to 3 or 6 months, not 18. No one really knows what's going to happen in that kind of timescale. The second is some schemes ask the employee or employer to pay an excess on resignation. So the car can go back. There's not a massive fee to pay, but there's, let's say, 1 or 2 months cost of the car to contribute on return. And the argument is that that is a good incentive to stay with the company. Again, I don't believe that's true. What we see is where there is a cost to the employee on resignation, they think, okay, well, in the future, I might have to pay that cost. I don't know whether I'm going to intend to resign in a year's time. So I'm just not going to commit at this point. So what we see if there are costs to pay on early return is that you get lower engagement in the scheme. And obviously, we're trying to drive as many people as possible into the scheme. So that's why we don't include an excess to pay on the early terminations. We reimburse without a shortfall. Finally, we sometimes hear, okay, you shouldn't worry about your employees not paying you back because you wouldn't hire them if you didn't trust them. I think obviously this is true for the vast majority of cases, but unfortunately there are cases where employees cannot or do not repay their employer even when it's part of their obligations. And I think it's important that those instances are covered for an employer. So again, they don't need to really think about it before proceeding with the salary sacrifice scheme. So that's why for us, we thought no exclusion periods, no excess, and we should cover the employer if the employee doesn't reimburse them. So hopefully that makes sense. And obviously it's a valuable part of the product, so who can get it? For us, we've offered this to new companies and existing companies in our scheme. So we've just improved our service for our existing companies, and that's all included automatically. If you're a customer with us and you've been with us since before 2022, firstly, thank you very much. We will ask you to sign a new contract just to get all our paperwork in order for you to access this benefit. If you're on here, I'd love a chat afterwards and say thank you and talk you through that process. Someone will reach out just to get you to sign an updated contract. So if you like what you heard and you want to find out more, because we didn't talk about the other two pieces, which are trusted 5-star service and the best prices available, you'll probably want to know a fair amount more about the scheme before you move forward. So please do take the next step. Go to our website, electriccarscheme.com, click the button to book a demo, and that will reserve you a slot to talk with someone like Cameron, and you'll have a one-to-one chat, and you work out from there whether this is a good thing for you. Or if you can't quite work out what to do next, you can always just email me. I'm at tom@electriccarscheme.com. If you're already part of our scheme and you think, wow, this is good, I really want to promote this more in my company, I have renewed confidence and think it's a good thing, how do we do this more in our company? We're here to support the rollout of the scheme within your company. So we send internal emails, we can share emails with you that are templated, we host webinars. I think we just hosted one with 500 employees on it. We can host a drive day, come to your offices with a few electric cars, getting your team to take some test drives. And we have a team there to support you. So support at electriccarscheme.com. And equally, if any questions, you can reach out to me and I'll do my best to help. I'm at tom@electriccarscheme.com.